Hey everybody, today we're going to make a tactics video, and this tactics video is going to be basically about using high-speed units to kind of bait your opponent into doing what you want him to do without them even realizing it. And this tactic that we're going to be going over is called the false refused flank. And this is a great tactic to use and combine with your Warbike-star, or maybe battle wagons or trucks, some other fast unit. Before we get into the false refuse flank, we need to get into a refuse flank. Now you've probably heard that before if you've watched any sort of Warhammer Tactics videos. But essentially what a refuse flank is, so you got your deployment zone, you got your deployment zone. Basically what a refuse flank is either you set up first, so then you set up your army, say roughly evenly spread out across your deployment zone. And what your opponent will do is load up one side of his deployment zone with his entire army. The idea is that this unit portion now can attack the flank of your army, while this portion of your army is going to take a turn or two to get repositioned and get back into the fight. So this way your opponent has an entire army to bear against half of yours, roughly. Or if you have weaker units on one side and like your Death Star on the other side, they'll flank up to the weak side to try and roll up into your stronger stuff. So this is the basics of a refused flank. Is that where your opponent overloads one side of your army to try and reduce the amount of resistance he's fighting against, reduce the points basically that he's fighting against. So you got the full army against a portion of the army. That gives you a major advantage. So that's what a refused flank is. So what is a false refused flank? Well, basically what a false refused flank does, the idea is to bait your opponent into doing a false flank maneuver, and which is what you want them to do. So let's go again with the deployment zones. So let's say we take my Warbike-star army. So let's say I put the boys, let's just say, hypothetically, you have, let's say, Grots over here. You see that? I'm going to move this up a little bit. So let's say you have Grots, Ludas, mech guns, and maybe some boys. And then over here you have, let's say, your Warbike-star. So this is how you would set up into a false refuse flank or deployment, is you intentionally put your weaker units all on one side. Again, this really only works well if you're deploying second. If you're deploying first, if you're deploying first, I'm sorry. If you're deploying second, your opponent may still load up on one side and you can do this. But if you're deploying first, being deceptive like this, like intentionally putting your weaker units on one side and your stronger units on the other side, the idea is to force your opponent into a refused flank. And of course they're thinking, aha, I'm going to use a refused flank. Well, they might not realize that's what it's called, but so they might set up their entire army right here. And the idea is for them to push into your weaker flank and keeping the rest of your army out of position. What they don't realize, though, is that you're planning for this, and your entire goal is to reposition your army. So they're going to move up. So if you're deployed first, and they deployed like this, so think, haha, they got an advantage here. Now suddenly what you're going to do is you're going to shift everything. So the boys are going to shift over this way, on average of 7 inches, and then your bike's shifting over 24 inches. Now suddenly, he's got a problem, because now the bikes are threatening his flank. So if he moves up against your weaker units like he had planned, or let's say he steals the initiative and he moves up against your weaker units, now suddenly he's got the bikes in his flank. And you got the boys intercepting the push against the weaker units. This could also be the CSM allied detachment for me. Or I could even do the boys on one side and put both the CSM and the bikes on one flank and push into the sling. And now the idea is now you've completely negated his attack plan. Because now you've got the bikes on his flank, you've got the boys in front of him, and the weaker units pounding him from afar. So it means you're really going to be playing on a smaller part of the table, which is a big advantage for you playing orcs, because that way you can get into assaults better. You don't have to worry about failing charges. You don't have to be worried about running around for objectives. Everything is happening right here on the side of the table, and it's going to be just a brutal fight. But if you can get your bikes, a Warbike-star, or say the Chaos Lord and Spawn into a flank of your opponent's army, right here, while the boys are coming in from the front, I mean, that's a two-pronged attack that's really going to devastate just about anything. So this is a real quick tactics video. I'm sure if you really wanted to, you could search on YouTube. There's a lot of videos about the refuse flank. Fritz does some, for sure. But the refuse flank is a common tactic. And setting up a false refuse flank, where you're baiting your opponent into thinking they're taking the initiative, but they're really doing what you want them to do. So basically, this is the best example of, I have you right where you want me. And it's all about, and then of course, if you're planning on this, saying something's got a small elite army, then you can set up terrain, you can set up objectives. You can plan ahead of this the entire time. So you want your objectives primarily on this side here, where you're going to be fighting. And you're going to want terrain such that you have a relatively clear path through here and through here, but then maybe some in the middle here to slow him down a little bit, slow down your opponent a little bit. So you can set up the terrain, you can set up the objectives, you can deploy, have everything set up to bait your opponent into doing exactly what you want to do. And that's what the false refuse flank is all about. I use this tactic time and time again to great effect with fast units. Now you've got to have the fast units to be able to pull this off. Bikes, the beasts, battle wagons with mega knobs. The old knob backers is where this really worked out well. Because generally you're going to have your opponent's going to put the stronger units in front and the weaker units in back. And then the bikes will come in here, flank out, and just take out any sort of support units, while the boys can handle just about anything else. So that's really about all I got to say about the false refuse flank. This is one of those things that you kind of have to practice. This is just a rudimentary, what's the word I'm looking for, overview of the false refuse flank tactic. And it's easy to use. It can make your opponent think they're doing something really, really smart, when in fact they're just falling into your trap. So that's about all I have to say about this in this episode of Book of the Beast. I'll talk to you guys later.